Hi everyone. This is our example for chapter 7, sections 7.3 and 7.4. So 7.3 is going to consist of structures, and 7.4 example will consist of two-dimensional arrays. So I'm going to go over two different examples. The first example is going to be from page 355, which is number 23, baseball. Okay. So basically, this program is going to read a text file. This is the text file that will be read. So you see that there are several different lines of information. There are player names, the team that they play for. Um, I think the number of hits is this one, and I forgot what the third one is. But each of these lines of information will be read and retrieved from this particular text file and processed through your form here. So that's what we'll be looking at. I wanted you to be able to look at the file so that you'll see the types of information. Notice that the commas are the delimiters. All right. So let's close that. Okay. So notice if you go to page 355, you will get the instructions. So this left-hand side, this list box is to present the list of teams. And then the user is able to click on a team. And once the user clicks on a team, the players will be listed inside of this particular window, which is going to look like a grid. It's going to look like uh, rows and columns, okay? And then they will also be sorted by names and sorted by the number of hits in decreasing order, okay? So decreasing order is descending. So now we will also have queries used. So here we're looking at the coding window. So we're inside of our form, of course, and we're creating a structure. So we're creating a structure called player, which will consist of the information that we saw in the text file. Okay. So the name of the player, the team that they play for, at bats. I'm not much of a baseball player person, so I'm sure you would know more about these terms than I do. And then number of hits. Okay. So this will be considered the structure that we will be using to include all the members, all this information pertaining to each player. So each player will be a part of the player construct. Okay, so each person listed in that text file. All right, so now we are creating an array of this particular structure. All right, so now players will consist of all the information pertaining to each player in the text file, and we'll be adding this information to this array. So this goes back to having an array of structures. Okay, so this is what's going to happen. So once the form loads, what we basically wanted to do is go ahead and read our text file first. So now player stats is the name of this array that we're creating here. We're going to read the lines of information, all the lines inside of the baseball text file. And then we're creating an integer variable here that will hold the player stats dot count, however many items are in that particular array. Okay, so that's what we're grabbing here. -1, if you guys recall, this is to make sure you don't go out of bounds because the index always starts at 0. We have to offset it and we have to subtract by 1 in some instances. Okay. And then redim, which means we are changing the size of players. And so that means now we're going to actually give it a size. If you recall here, we just declared an array of players, all right, that structure, but we didn't give it a size. So in this case, we're declaring what size it would be. So remember, redim allows you to resize your array and any contents or any information that might have been in it will be lost. But we hadn't added anything, so we're okay. And as you saw in the previous video, we're using line to retrieve the full line of text from the text file. And then the data array is going to hold all the information that we are retrieving from that particular text file. All right. It's going to allow us to process it. Okay. All right. So we're using a regular for loop. We're going to begin I at 0 because that's the first index, and we're going to count up to n, which is the size of the array. Like that's how many items, lines of items are in that particular text file. So player stats I, which we know we read the text file already. So player stats I, which is location 0, has the first full line of text, and we saw how it was aligned. Okay. And now we're splitting it into the different types of data that is there. So data line, which is the text, holds the full line of text split. Remember, we're splitting it, and comma is the delimiter. And I don't think I mentioned this in the previous video. I might have, but this just indicates that the comma here is considered a type R. That's what the C represents, just in case I didn't say that. All right, and so you can use any character, any delimiter here, but most common is going to be a comma or a space. So now once it gets to the comma, it's going to grab the first name. So players, which is the array that you have created to hold all the players' information. So we're in location 0 for the first iteration. So in location 0, we're gonna update name to whatever's in this particular data, whatever the first thing that was retrieved. Players location 0 still, we're still here dealing with team, and we're going to add whatever information has been stored inside of data array. All right, same thing here, location 0, data 2, whatever's in that location. So at bats, and we saw that, and then the number of hits, and notice that it's being converted to make sure that it fits the appropriate type, because remember, hits and at bats both were integer values, data type that we created. All right, so once the loop is done traversing player stats and retrieving all the information and placing it in our array of players, our array of structure, which includes each of the members, now we're ready to create a query that's going to retrieve the information that we're wanting to retrieve. So here, query so person, we're just basically whatever name you wanted to have, and players, which is the array that we are accessing to have all the team members' information. So what we're wanting to do is order by team, so in ascending order. So now we're basically going to order by whatever the team is inside of that particular, whatever is stored. So you're just getting all those values. And then select person.team. So wherever the person and team, whatever team you're ordering by, and it's going in ascending order. And remember, there are no duplicates, because remember, there are more than one player. So several different players will be on the same team. So we don't want any duplications. So we just want to grab whatever the team is and basically retrieve it and place it inside of this query bucket. So this query bucket will only consist of all the different team names. Okay. So what it's going to do is check each person and see what team they are playing for, and making sure that there are no duplications. Okay. And then our list box will now consist of everything that this query has. So now we're basically filling this list box here with all the different team names. Okay. And then what's going to happen is every time someone makes a selection, we want to present the name of the player and their hits. Okay. So now we need to indicate what happens when the selected index change. Remember, we discussed this previously, where when a user makes a selection, it changes the index. It will be -1 whenever there's nothing selected, but once the user makes a selection, now we can determine what we want to look at. If you're making a selection in your list box, you can look at the selected item, which will be the text there, or you can look at the selected index. It just depends, okay? So in this case, selected team here will basically list teams.text, which means it's going to retrieve whatever the user has selected in that list box. And now it's going to be stored inside of selected team. Okay. And then this query here is going to basically in from players is going to select wherever the person's team equals whatever team you selected. So any person that's on that team is going to basically select that person, and it's also going to select that person's number of hits. So it's going to get their name and their hits. And when it presents all this information in this query, it's going to be in descending order based on the number of hits. Okay. So that means whenever you make a selection in this particular list box, whatever team you selected, it will now list all the players on that team in descending order based on their number of hits. Okay. So when it says descending, it's going to start high and decrease. Okay. And notice that is using a data grid view. So that means when it presents it, it's going to look like a table. So our data source is the to list, the query to list. This is the query, and we're grabbing the list of items that is there. Remember, you can clear this out. This is optional. You don't want anything selected at this point. And then now you indicate how you want it to be presented. So now columns, you're telling what you want the header text to be, name. So now you're going to indicate player. So it's going to present player with each of the person's names there. And then hits, whatever the number of hits the user has, is going to present the number of hits. So let's look at this. And we're just going to debug it. And we're going to see where now we have, it's moving slow. Okay, so now you have all the teams listed here. Okay. And what you want to do is, you see Angels is selected, so it has those players and it has the number of hits in descending order. So it starts with the player with the highest and list them as they decrease. Okay. Braves, you see that the list changes, the name changes, the hits change. And notice this is in data grid view. Player on the left and hits here on the right. So the first column has player, the second column has hits. Okay. So this example that's the conclusion of this particular example, which consists of arrays of structures. So you can see where you can incorporate structures, you can incorporate a data grid view, how you can use your queries as well. Now, the next example is going to be based on two-dimensional arrays, okay? So this one here is on page 372, number 24. So in this particular one, you're going to get information from the user, and you're gonna basically present the information in a one-dimensional array. So you're gonna place the student, you're gonna get the student's name and their grades, you're gonna get that input, and you're gonna place it all in a one-dimensional array. And then once you retrieve that, you're now gonna place everything, all grades, in a two-dimensional array for every person. I think that's probably gonna be a long time inputting information, but it's okay. All right, so let's look at this. All right, so we have our name, just so we make sure when we're looking at the code, we know what we're looking at. So you have your list output here. You have your exam 1, exam 2, exam 3. You have a text box to retrieve each of those grades. You have a text box to retrieve the name. You have an add student button where you can continue to add a student, and then you have a you have a display report button where you can display whatever you're wanting to display. Okay. So let's look at the code here. All right, so this one would not be reading any information, okay? We're just gonna get no files or anything. It's just gonna get the information, okay? Now, here you have created a two-dimensional array called scores. And you'll notice here, this is the number of rows and this is the number of columns, okay? And then we have count as an integer variable that will keep count of the number of students. And then we have two separate, remember we have two separate one-dimensional arrays. So this is a one-dimensional array that will consist of all the names, and this is a one-dimensional array that will consist of all the grades, okay? And you notice that there is no specified size at this point, okay? All right, so we had an add student button. So that's what we want. This is what we want to happen when the user clicks the add student button. Okay. So here, if count equals 15, then 15 students are already stored. So remember, we're going to get 15 different students. So what will happen is it will continue to allow the user to enter 15 students once they have gotten 15 students. If you try to enter, press the button again, this message will appear indicating you've already added 15. Otherwise, now count be incremented to 1. So we're ready to grab the first person that we will want to add, okay? So now names, which is the one-dimensional array, count, which is 1 minus 1, so 0. And then you're going to add whatever the text name, grab the text name, the name that the user entered in the text box, add it to that array. And then scores, count minus 1. So in this case, what you're going to do is go ahead and add the score. So notice that you come up here. We remember that scores is a two-dimensional array. So now what you're telling it here, so count is 0, basically 1, well, 1, because we've initialized it to 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. So in location, in row 0, column 0, I want to add the first grade, okay? And then in the same row, row 0, column 1, I want to add the next grade. Row 0, column 2, I want to add the next grade. Okay. And then now you're clearing everything out. So basically, you're just resetting the input. So now that you've entered the first person and their score, their name and their scores, now you're ready to clear that out. So you're going to clear out the text box name, the exam 1, exam 2, exam 3. And you're going to set the focus back in your text name and you're going to repeat the process. Okay. So now every time you click add, it's going to allow you to add the student. All right. And then once you're done, you're wanting to now display your report. Okay. So dim sum as integer. So we will be getting the average of the grades, excuse me, too. But right now, let's just look at what's happening. So right now you're going to clear out your list output, make sure there's nothing there. Now you're going to add, first you're going to add student semester average. So now that's basically going to be a heading. And then for I as integer, we're going to start that at 0 and then count minus 1. So whatever the value of count in this case is going to start in the very first location. And then now this is your accumulator that's going to get the sum of the scores. Okay, so we set it equal to 0. So for exam as integer, 0 to 2. So you're going to count up to start from 0 and then you're going to count up to 2. And you're going to add up all the values. So sum plus equals. So here scores, which is your two-dimensional array. And here I is going to be, in this case, 0 because you started here at 0. And then exam, you started exam at 0. So 0, 0. So it's going to start at inside of scores, that particular two-dimensional array, and each row on that row, each column. Sorry. So 0, 0. And then once it's done, it's going to present that person's name. So here you'll see items. So you're ready to display. So add here, names, whatever location. And then here, you're still inside of the loop. So we're still in location 0 in this case because we're still inside of this loop. So location 0, and then you're going to grab that first person's name. You're going to indicate what their average is. So sum divided by 3. And then you're going to present it as a number. That's the syntax. Okay. So that's what it's going to do for all of the students and their grades. Okay. And something else that you're going to also do is present the median on the exam. So what that means is once you put the numbers in order, you're going to get the middle score. What's the median, like the median score? Okay. All right. So here, exam median. So now this is where it will determine what that particular value is. So for exam, starts at 0, counts up to 2. You're going to change the size of grades here in this case. So you're getting rid of all the contents because you didn't preserve it. And then grades I, which is in location 0, you're going to retrieve each item that's in this particular location. So you're going to start at the first location, and then which is I0, and then exam also 0. So 0, 0, row 0, column 0. And then whatever's there, you're going to store it in this array in the first location. And it's just going to repeat that process for that particular loop. Okay. And then now you're going to present here exam. So here, whatever the value of exam is, which in this case, we're still in the first iteration. So 0, so plus 1. So you're basically going to say the first person, number 1, and then what the median score is for those grades. All right, for each person. All right, so when you have their scores, they enter 3 grades, you're going to determine what their median score is. But notice median is a function procedure. So this is calling the function procedure here. And now we have to conduct a calculation. And once it conducts a calculation, it's going to return that particular value. Okay, sorry, my computer started acting up. All right, so function procedure median is passing grades as a parameter. So we'll be processing the grades that are in have been added to the grades array. And we're going to use link. So here query, so you're accessing the grade in grades. You want to order them by grade in ascending order. So you're selecting each grade that's in this particular array, and you are going to place them in an ascending order. So that's what this query will consist of, all of the grades in ascending order. So because it's a list, what you're going to do is you're going to update grades to convert that query to an array. So it's going to consist of all of those grades in array form. Okay. And now them in as integer, and now we're ready to check for what we're looking for. Okay. All right. So notice here we're checking for odd and even. Now this here goes a little bit more in depth using your mod. This goes back to our variables and our operators. Remember, mod is just basically when you are dividing and you take the remainder. So in this case, we're checking to see if there's a remainder, okay? If there is a remainder, then that means it's an odd number, okay? If it equals 0, then that means it's an even number because there is no remainder, okay? So grades.count here, which is basically the array and however many items are there, mod divided by 2, and you're going to determine if once you do mod, once it divides by 2, if it does not equal 0, this is not equal to, by the way. If it's not equal to 0, that means it's an odd number. Okay, so now n will be updated to here grades.count minus 1 divided by 2. All right. And now N will be the update. And this here will return whatever in that location grades and go to that location and return that particular value, which will indicate that's the median. And then it'll return it in place it here. Okay. That will be the median score. However, if it does in fact equal 0, which if it does equal 0 in this case. So if it does equal 0, that means it's not going to step inside of here. So here, now, this is what will happen. It'll still conduct the same test, but what will happen is you are going to take whatever the count is and divide first and then subtract by 1. Okay. And then now grades, whatever's in location N, right? Because you've updated it here. Whatever's in location N, you're going to add to whatever's in location, the location right next to it. You have to add those up and you have to get the average of those, and that will be your median score. Okay, that's what's happening here. If it sounds a little tricky, you can just quickly look up median. I'm not sure if you guys recall mode and median and mean. So maybe check into that. Mode is just those that occur more than once. Mean is the average. Median is the median score. Okay, so maybe look those up so that when you're going through this, you can kind of have an idea of what's happening. Okay. Is going to be so 15 students will take quite a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this file with you inside of Canvas. So if you want to test it out on your computer, you can download it and extract all the files and run it on your system and add all the grades and just see what the display would be. So I will add this file into Canvas and you can download it and test it out. Okay. Good luck, and I'll see you in the next video.